Okay, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to this week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. We are beginning once again at the beginning of the Torah. We're in Parshat Bereshit, and we'll see what we can get out of it. Let me stop this video here, and let me set this up differently. Let's stop this. Torah. And there we go. Okay, so first of all, let me just get a sound check. Can everybody hear me okay? Just let me know if you can hear me. Just want to make sure the sound is okay. So just post in the comments if the sound is okay. Somebody, please. Anybody? Okay, well, I got a thumbs up. I'll take that as okay. It should be all right. Okay, so here we are. We're going to dig in, and this is Parshat Bereshit. We basically, okay, cool. Thank you, Obi Clark. We basically do the schedule according to the Rabbinites. Why? Because that's what most of the Jews do, and so to stay in sync with them, we do it too, to stay, let's say, relevant. Okay. Also, there's no reason not to, right? I mean, the yearly cycles is a pretty good idea if people are going to meet in synagogues and read the Torah a little bit each year. Then why not in a one-year cycle? Of course, in other communities over the generations, and even now today, they have sometimes not not 1 year cycles, but 2 year cycles, and even 3 year cycles in some rare cases. But we're going to go according to the standard 1 year cycle. Okay, so that's where we were last in Deuteronomy. And so just a quick pop quiz. Does anyone know what the last word in the entire Torah is? Does anybody know without looking? Prime Minister. Without looking, does anybody know what the last word in the entire Torah is? If you do, just type it in. No cheating. Going once. Going twice. Okay, well, let's take a look. This is Deuteronomy 34. We switch over to the Hebrew. Bring up the entire chapter. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, and there it is. Can you see it? That's the last word in the entire Torah, Yisrael. Okay? Is there any great significance to that? No, I don't think so. If I were the rabbi that I spent a couple of days ago with, I won't say where, nice, super nice guy, but you know, all he did was talk about Kabbalah, 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 and then give it some mystical meaning, etc. But it just happens to be the last word of the Torah, Yisrael. Okay? And the sentence itself is, and speaking about Moses, right? L'chol hayad hazaka. I'm sorry, in this case, it's not speaking about, it's speaking about Moses. U'l'chol hayad hazaka, u'l'chol hamorah agadol asher asah Moshe la'einei kol Yisrael. And all strong hand and all of the great morah, they usually translate as acts of fear, terror, I think, terror. Agadol, the great terror, Asher Asah, Moshe, which Moshe did, La'inei Kol Yisrael, that did before all of the eyes of Israel. So speaking about, basically speaking about the plagues that Moshe did, that Moshe organized, orchestrated in Israel. So that's the last word of the Torah, okay? Israel. So if anybody asks you that, now you know. And after that, where do we go? We go from Deuteronomy all the way back to Bereshit, to Genesis. And of course, we all know the first word of the Torah. Even people who don't study the Torah very much know the first word of the Torah, right? In the beginning, Bereshit. So we'll ask ourselves, does this really mean in the beginning? That's the way it's usually translated, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? That's standard, okay? But that's not the only translation you're going to get. And the fact that that's not the only translation you're going to get actually has great implications. And the main question that I want to ask is something that I realized probably now maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I'm going to guess, that at least in my eyes unlocks the entire Genesis story. I won't say the entire Genesis story. It's a huge, by the way, we're having a huge fly problem. It just started, it's rainy season now, and the flies are just proliferating. So, I mean, like, I've never seen so many flies in my entire life. So every so often you see me just clap the air. No, I haven't gone crazy. Actually, I went crazy probably many, many years ago, but I haven't gone crazy again or gone crazier. It just means I'm trying to kill a fly. So just excuse that. So, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim. Okay, so in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But let's see how other translators render that. Let's go to our favorite, who is not really my favorite, actually, overall. But he's good. You know, he does a job. It's kind of a modern, you know, academic commentary, and that is our Robert Alter. Okay, you know, it's good base to start with. It's not bad. He's very good. I don't agree with everything he says, but who does? Who agrees with everything that anyone says? Okay, so I don't even agree with what I say half the time. All right, so it's like the famous quote by Walt Whitman. It's, do I contradict myself? Well then, I contradict myself. Sometimes we're so deep. Sometimes we're so mysterious, each of us, that we don't even understand ourselves. a joke. So, acknowledgements, my wife, my children, my this, my that. Okay, professor this. Okay, introduction. All right, where's Bereshit? Oh, I think you know what? It's better if I go up to this. There we go. Chapter 1. So how does Robert Alter render it? When God began to create heaven and earth. Okay, so it doesn't say in the beginning God created the heaven and earth. Okay, here Robert Alter renders it as when God began to create heaven and earth. It's a big difference, right? In the beginning. Okay, so in the beginning implies that these verses are speaking about basically cosmology, which they are. But the big question is where does it start off? You know, what part of the cosmology does it start off? Well, most people think it says "Let there be light," and that's speaking about, you know, this this primordial light that was created at the Big Bang. I don't know if that's the way people thought before the Big Bang was kind of, you know, exploded, no pun intended, on the scene in the 1950s. But that's the way most people think of it now, right? That God created light itself, but that's not really what it's saying. And I'm gonna try to prove it to you. And I would love to get some discussion going on this. But by contrast, let's see. I have this guy Hertz, Dr. Rabbi Hertz. This is the chumash that was in my parents' conservative synagogue when I was growing up, that I was dragged to by my ear every Shabbat against my will. And I hated it so much, and it was so boring to me that all I would do is basically make mischief and trouble and wait for the kiddush so I could stuff my face with gefilte fish and herring and challah. Yeah, no, I was not a good Jew. Well, I was. I didn't murder anyone. It's not the age of 4. No, I'm just joking. But you know what? If I could do it all over again, I actually miss those days because I was too young, and Judaism was kind of too irrelevant to me for me to really appreciate it. But I still remember back in the days, the Rabbi Orntlicha, and the services, and I wish I knew back then what I knew now, and I think I would have appreciated it all so much more. But as it was, Judaism as an American kid growing up in the United States in a kind of traditional but certainly not religious home, Judaism just didn't speak to me. So I left it at a very early age, only to find it once again in my early 20s. Okay, at any rate, neither here nor there. So let's go to this page here. So this is the Soncino Press, just to show you which commentary this is. And I'm always trying to look for new commentaries, so not always relying on Robert Alt. This one. Okay. Does that work? So this is Dr. Rabbi Hertz. I can't remember his first name. Joseph Hertz, maybe. At any rate, late chief rabbi of the British Empire, Soncino Press. So this is usually called the Soncino Chumash, or the Soncino Torah, and this is the one that we had in our synagogue built up, and it's actually pretty darn decent commentary, I have to say. It's very rabbinical places, but it's also very very academic and kind of open. It's not your standard, you know, Rashi kind of stuff all the time. Anywho, so let's see what that commentary has to say. So, where is it? Right. The word order is very strange here. So here it is. Okay. So here we get the standard translation. I can't highlight in this edition, so we just have to kind of see where I'm talking about. And we're in the upper left hand. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Right. So that's your standard translation right there. And Rabbi Dr. Hertz says, verse 1 is a majestic summary of the story of creation. God is the beginning, nay, the cause of all things. The remainder of the chapter gives details of the successive acts of creation. Ages untold may have elapsed between the calling of matter into being and the reduction of chaos to ordered arrangements. Okay? And we could always focus also on the word bara, which is translated as created. Sometimes it has the sense of crafted. Right? Well, let's see what it says. The Hebrew word is in the singular, thus precluding any idea that its subject Elohim is to be understood in the plural sense. Okay? The term bara is used exclusively of divine activity. A number of commentaries will point that out. Man is spoken of as making or forming, but never is creating, I producing out of nothing. So we always get the idea, well, that bara means making something out of nothing. Nope. But I'm not so sure that that's the exact meaning of the word, but let's go with that for now, because this idea of yesh min ayin, or ex nihilo, something out of nothing, it's a very medieval idea. The medieval philosophers used to speak about that a lot. So he made the heaven and the earth. So we get two translations, one the standard, one here. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and one a bit more modern, shall we say, when God began to create the heaven and the earth. Okay, so so the question is, what is this word Bereshit, or this phrase, shall we say, Bereshit bara? What does it mean? Okay, and if you go with the standard explanation, then Bereshit means in the beginning, right? It's almost like a preposition. 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 I think preposition. And then bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. God created the heaven and the earth, heavens and the earth, right? Or you could look at it as Bereshit bara, okay? In the beginning of God creating, or Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning of God's creating, okay, the heaven and the earth, okay? And I think the implications are vastly different. Actually, I go with the Robert Alter version, because what it means is that we're not starting at the beginning of the universe when we take the Robert Alter understanding of it, right? In the beginning, if we take the Rabbi Hertz understanding, in the beginning, and the standard understanding, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, right? That's what he did. He started from nothing, okay? Or in the beginning, when he first thing he did, or he started creating, and he created the heaven and the earth, okay? But here, we understand it the other way, okay? And grammatically, as well as logically, it makes more sense to me the other way. In the beginning of God's creating of the heaven and the earth, and such happened. And this makes a lot more sense, okay? Because in the beginning, did God create the heavens and the earth? Did he really create the heavens and the earth in the beginning? No. The earth didn't come about until, I don't know, I have to remember my cosmology now, right? 4 billion years ago? Is that right? We say the earth universe is around 14 billion years old, and the earth is 4 billion years old. Let's just verify that. Age of the earth, 4.53 billion years ago. Age of the universe, 13.7 billion years ago, right? So in the beginning, God did not create the earth according to our standard model of cosmology now, right? It was only 9 billion years later, approximately, let's say it's 14 billion, 14, whatever, we'll just say 13 billion and 4 billion, right? So only 9 billion years later, approximately, after God created the universe, did the earth come into being. So that means if the total age of the universe is 14 billion years old, and the age of the earth is, well, this way, we say 4.5, so we can do equals 4.5 divided by 13.7. So the earth only came into being the last 32 hundredths, the last 32% of the age of the universe. Approximately the last third of the universe, right? So 2/3 of the existence of the universe, according to the current model of cosmology, the earth did not exist. See that? Isn't that fascinating? And so we don't have to understand, and we should not understand this verse, in my opinion, as in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, because he did not create the earth. You could say, okay, he created the heavens, right? Even then he didn't create the heavens, because if you look at the way the Big Bang unfolded, first you had like a soup of subatomic particles, and then they resolved, and you have background, cosmic background radiation, and they kind of started converting from, started consolidating into atoms, and then the atoms consolidated into compounds, et cetera, and eventually they formed, blocks of mass, which started burning the stars, planet, et cetera. Right? It's a pretty poor overview of cosmology, even though I watch a lot of cosmology stuff, and but nonetheless, the Earth did not exist at the beginning. So I don't think it's a good rendering to say it's just factually not true according to our understanding of cosmology, and it doesn't make sense even grammatically here. Okay, because so what is this word Bereshit? Okay, Bereshit means first of all. Okay, in fact, let's see if we can find this word elsewhere. Bereshit. Get a little bit more of an understanding of what it means. Let's grab it, search it. Our friend Safaria here. See if it comes up elsewhere. Okay, so we can look at, and I don't want to get too far off track, but here, Exodus 23:19, Reshit Bikurei Admatcha Tavi Beit Yahweh Elohecha Lo Tevasher B'Chalev Imo. So the Reshit Bikurei Admatcha. So Bikurei Admatcha is the oh God, how do you say it? Word is escaping. The first fruits. Okay, so bikur is related to the word bachor, which means the firstborn, and the bikur or the bikurim are the first fruits, and reshit, okay, would mean the, let's say, the first of the first fruits, or maybe the best of the first fruits, right? The best of the first fruits, reshit. Okay, in fact, let's get a translation on that. We'll go to let's go to Robert Alter on that one. Now go to Everett Fox. So that's Exodus 23:14. It's there. So 23:14. I'm sorry, Exodus 23:19. And so here we go. So Robert Everett Fox translates it as such. Okay, the choicest firstlings of your soil. Okay, the choicest firstlings of your soil. So the word reshit he translates as choicest. Okay, the first fruits, what we usually translate as the first fruits, he translates as firstlings. Again, it's bikurei. Admatcha is your land or your soil. Okay, so the choicest, reshit, the best of the choicest, from the word rosh. Okay, or head. So here we have in Exodus 23:19, we have the word reshit. And oops, go with that one. Okay, go with this up a little bit too. Okay, so reshit, the head or the first. Okay, and so let's analyze what is the part of part of speech. So it's called now. Remember back to third grade. The part of speech that this is. Okay, so bikurei is a noun. Admatcha is a noun. Reshit is also a noun, right? So reshit will go with Everett Fox's. God, these flies are. Hold on, I just got to do one, just symbolically. I'm just going to take fly and I'm going to leave it here as a lesson, you know, as an abject lesson to all its brothers and sisters, that they know what's going to happen if they come near me. Okay, so Reshit Bikurei Admatcha. So this is a noun. Okay, we'll go with Everett Fox's translation, wherever it is. Okay, the choicest. Actually, he translates it as an adjective, but I don't think that's correct. It's not an adjective because adjectives in become after the noun. So that's actually kind of not an exact translation. So let's go with Robert Alter on that one. This is Exodus 23:18. (23:18). Where'd it go? Okay. I'm confused. Here it is. The best. It is a noun, right? Because it's okay, in this case, it's a noun. The best. It's a noun based on an adjective. Okay, I guess you could say the same thing here. The choicest. Okay, so really it's a noun. I'm sorry, my mistake. Okay, the choicest, but maybe it's more clear in the Robert Alter. At any rate, what I'm trying to say is that the word reshit is a noun, which means the best or the choicest or the head. Okay, maybe that's the best way because it comes from the word rosh, which means head. So the head or the top, maybe we can translate it that way. Okay, so the top or the best of the first fruits of your land, right? So that's what we see there in Exodus 23:19. We see the same thing in Exodus 34:26. Okay, we see the same thing similar in Leviticus 23:10. Okay, et omer reshit kitzirchem el hakohen. Okay, so so this one here also is speaking about the first fruits or the best or the top, the choicest of your harvest. Okay, so reshit is a noun. Okay, so you can see where else. Bereshit avoni. Okay, in Genesis 49:3. This is the blessing to Ruvain, and it's very interesting here. The Bechori ata kochi Bereshit avoni. So we see again. We saw here that the word Bereshit appears with bikurim, with the word bikurim, which is translated the first fruits. And here in the blessing that Yaakov gives to Ruvain, we see Bechor and Reshit appearing together again. In this case, Bechor means firstborn, which is really the underlying meaning of the word of where the word bikurim comes. The first fruits really means it comes from the word Bechor, which means the firstborn. Okay, so Ruvain Bechoriata, Ruvain, you are my firstborn, Kochi, my strength, Bereshit Avoni, or Oni, and the beginning of my strength. Okay, so so we see that the word Bereshit is a noun. Okay, and it means the best, top, the choice, the beginning. And now if we go back to Genesis 1, okay? So we'll go with that at the beginning, right? Because that's the context here. Okay, it doesn't mean the choicest or the best. It means in this case, okay, from the underlying word rosh, which means the head of the beginning, just like Rosh Chodesh, okay, means the head of the month or the first day of the month. So here it's Bereshit, okay? So if Reshit is a noun, okay, then Bereshit is in. So it is in the beginning, okay. Bara Elohim et Shamayim, okay. So you could see this as Elohim here as the subject and bara as the verb. In which case you would get the standard rendering, okay. Bereshit bara Elohim et Shamayim, in the beginning. Bara Elohim, okay, God created the heavens and the earth, okay. But we could see it differently as well, okay. We could see this as meaning that in the beginning of God's creating, okay, Bereshit Elohim bara, Bereshit bara Elohim, we could see this as being in a sense a gerund, okay. So not seeing it as the verb, but seeing this phrase together as Bereshit bara, in the beginning of God's creating the heaven and the earth, okay, or in the beginning of when, not in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, okay, but in the beginning of God's creating of the heaven and the earth, okay. And how do we know that that might be the case? Well, let's just see. Let's see if I can see an example here. No, I can't find it here. Where it is. Okay, let's just leave it at that. Okay, so at any rate, the implications are very different. As in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, or in the beginning of God's creating the heaven and the earth. Okay, and I think that again, from the context and from the grammatical underpinnings here that we should go with the latter definition. And I'll tell you why, from the point of view of the context, why I think so. Okay. Any questions? Any comments so far? Anybody want to say anything? Anybody? You can type it in. You can come online and say it, however you want to do it. No? Okay, so I'll go on. So the question is, the big question that everyone has, I think, and that I had, and that I came to a realization, again, maybe 5, 10 years ago, I don't remember exactly, is when does the Genesis story pick up, okay? And we already saw evidence that it doesn't pick up at the very beginning of the universe, because at the very beginning of the universe, at least according to our current understanding of cosmology, God did not create the earth. He didn't create it until 2/3 of the current age of the universe, until 2/3 of our towards our current day, right? So then what is this speaking about? Then where does the story pick up? Okay, and I would claim that the story picks up actually, as we saw, right? Once again, we had that the universe is 13.7 billion years old. We have the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and I would say that this is basically where the story picks up. Not at the creation of the universe, but at the creation of the Earth. This means there are already stars. There's already light in the universe. Okay, there are already galaxies. The universe basically looks more or less like it does today. Obviously, not all the same stars that existed back then exist today, and vice versa. And not all the planets that existed back then exist today, and not all the structures that existed back then exist today. But basically, the universe had already solidified into stars, planets, galaxies, asteroids, etc. It basically had the form that we have today. And I believe this is where the story picks up, basically at around the time of the creation of the Earth. And how do I know this? Okay, or I won't say no, because anytime anyone claims to know anything about Torah in general, then they're already putting themselves out there. But especially about the creation story is really kind of pushing it, because it is very, very difficult to understand. But I'll tell you some evidence that I have as to why I think this is the case. Okay, so that was the first piece of evidence. Okay, that if it does mean in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, that's an untrue statement, because God did not create the earth in the beginning. Okay, and He didn't create the heavens either, the skies. There were no skies. Okay, you could say that when it says the heavens, it means the universe, but that's not usually the word that's used for universe. The word that's used for universe is tevel. Okay, and shemayim usually means the sky that we see from the earth, and I think that's another key here. Okay, but I'm going to show more evidence. Okay, verse 2. Ba'aretz hayta tohu wa vohu. The earth was, they usually translate this as void and unformed. Perhaps a better way to translate it would be chaotic. It was chaos. There was no structure to it. Okay. Robert Alter translates it as, he uses some weird things, welter and waste. He wants to pick up on that tohu vavohu, which is rhymes in Hebrew, and he wants to pick it up using alliteration here. So welter and waste. Okay. But basically, it was not structured as it is today, right? And we're going to see how the structure is created. But one of the things that everybody misses when they read this verse is the first two words. The first two words are the ha'aretz hayta, the earth was. Okay, so it was tohu vavohu. It was void and unformed. It was welter and waste. It was chaos, but it existed. Okay, so we're picking up, that's more evidence that we're picking up the story of creation from the point of view of when the earth was created, not the point of view of when the universe was created. And this is the key, in my opinion, in my strong opinion, to understanding the first chapter of Genesis, or the first couple of chapters of Genesis. So let's go on. Tohu vavohu. The idea of tohu vavohu is very similar to the concept of chaos. Okay, not in the sense of in the colloquial sense of the word, but chaos. Okay, we can go with this. Chaos cosmology, the Greek creation myths. So chaos is a mythical void state preceding the creation of the universe, the cosmos in the Greek creation myths and Christian theology. The same term is used to refer to the gap or the abyss created by the separation of the earth. That's not exactly the definition I'm looking for. Here, it means emptiness, vast void, chasm, abyss. Okay. Hesiod and pre-Socratics used the Greek term in the context of cosmogony. Hesiod's chaos has been interpreted as either the gaping void above the earth created when earth and sky are separated from their primordial unity, or the gaping space below the earth on which earth rests. Well, this is very interesting, okay? So the gaping void above the earth created when earth and sky are separated from the primordial unity. We're going to see something very similar in Genesis, in just another verse or two, okay? So whatever state the earth was in, it still existed, right? It was still there. And this is another indication that the story picks up not at the beginning of the creation of the universe, but at the beginning of the creation of the earth. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, the choshech al pnei tehom. So there was darkness on the face of the abyss, or on the face of the deep. Okay, so why was there darkness on the face of the abyss? Because, and you know, I haven't prepared this formally. If this were like a formal lecture with where I had notes and everything, then we go back and compare it actually to what scientists think happened in the creation of the earth. But basically, to the best of my recollection, there was an ammonia, or I think it was an ammonia atmosphere, and basically you could not see the sun. The sun was there, the star already existed, right? Age of the sun. Let's go with that one for a second. So older than the Earth by a couple of 100 million years. Okay, so so the sun was already there. Okay, but you couldn't see it from the face of the Earth because the atmosphere was too thick. Okay, and maybe it would even be instructive to do this. Okay. So the oldest material found in the solar system is dated to so I think GA means giga annos. So so 4.562 billion years ago. By 4.5 billion years ago, the primordial Earth had formed. Okay? So note that phrase here, the primordial Earth. Right? The bodies in the solar system formed and evolved with the sun. In theory, a solar nebula partitions volume out of a molecular cloud by gravitational collapse, which begins to spin and flatten into a circumstellar disk, and then the planets grew out of that disk with the sun. So basically, there was a whole bunch of material, right? A nebula. You can look at this over here on the right, and then it basically the center collapsed, and eventually it acquired so much mass that it began to glow. It began to undergo a nuclear fusion, which is where the sun gets its energy, fuses hydrogen into helium, and and around it, other groups or chunks of matter formed, and one of those was the Earth. And we have the other planets, the asteroids, the outer planets in the it's called the Kuiper belt, and even further out in the Oort belt. The Kuiper belt is what contains the dwarf planet Pluto, and Charon, its moon, or its partner planet. At any rate, a nebula contains gas, ice, grains, and dust, including primordial nuclides. According to nebular theory, planetesimals formed by accretion. Okay? Planetesimals basically kind of a tiny object, a small planet, with the primordial Earth being estimated as likely taking anywhere from 70 to 100 million years to form. Okay? Estimates of the age of the moon range from 4.5 billion years, significantly younger. So I forget the moon for now. So after formation, so now we have an Earth. Okay. So between approximately 4.1 and 3.8 billion years ago, numerous asteroid impacts during the late heavy bombardment caused significant changes to the greatest surface. Oh, that's talking about the moon. All right. After formation, Earth's atmosphere and oceans were formed by volcanic activity and outgassing. Okay. And outgassing is the release of a gas that was dissolved, trapped, frozen, or absorbed in some material. Water vapor from these sources condensed into the oceans, augmented by water and ice from asteroids, protoplanets, comets. Sufficient water to fill the ocean may have been on Earth since it formed. In this model, atmospheric greenhouse gases kept the oceans from freezing when the newly forming sun had only 70% of its current luminosity. By 3.5 billion years ago, Earth's magnetic field was established, which helped prevent the atmosphere from being stripped away by the solar wind. Okay. As the molten outer layer of Earth cooled, it formed the first solid crust, which is thought to have been mafic in composition. The first continental crust, which was more felsic in composition, formed by the partial melting of this mafic crust. We could skip ahead a little bit. Okay, and then it goes on. So that's a scientific idea of the formation of the Earth, right? And we even have here a picture. Okay. Impression of the early Earth tinted orange by its methane-rich early atmosphere. So it's methane-rich, the early atmosphere. And the sun could not be seen from the Earth. And I think that's a key point, okay? This is what the Earth looked like back then. In this case, you do see through the atmosphere, so maybe this was later. Okay, at any rate, so let's get back to here, okay? So that's the kind of the chaos that's being spoken about, right? It wasn't in its current form, okay? Choshech al Pnei Tehom. So here we have darkness was on the face of the abyss. So there was some kind of abyss, perhaps that's referring again to the Earth being molten at the time, or maybe the entire Earth being covered with water at the time. But whatever it's referring to, there was choshech, darkness on the face of the deep, or on the face of the abyss. So at the surface of the Earth, it was dark, which is why we get the creation of the light. Okay, and what does that mean? The creation of the light. We'll get to that in a second. But what if you were standing on Earth at the time, it was there. There was a thick methane, or I think it was maybe an ammonia atmosphere above you. You couldn't see through the atmosphere. The earth was completely dark. And below it was either the molten earth, maybe that's what it's speaking about, to home, the abyss, or the earth was just covered with water. Okay? That's what the earth was. This is the primordial earth. Okay? Beruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. So ruach could either mean a wind, a physical wind, and I know that some commentators do go with that understanding, or it could mean the spirit, right? Ruach can also mean the spirit of God, merachefet, wafted or floated on the face of the water. So here they call it water, which would imply that the entire surface was covered with water, but water could maybe be meant figuratively and might just mean liquid, okay? So that's what we have. That's the beginning. That's where we pick up the story, the primordial earth. We don't pick it up at the beginning of the universe, but at the beginning of the primordial earth. Let's grab a little commentary here, some modern commentary, and see if there's anything that can be added. Okay, so hovering, this is what we saw. Ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. The verb attached to God's breath, wind, spirit, ruach, elsewhere describes an eagle fluttering over its young, and so might have a connotation of parturition or nurture, as well as rapid back and forth movements. Okay. So we don't get that much from Robert Alter on that one. I don't think we're going to get much from the Ibn Ezra. Probably know a little more than kind of a medieval cosmology. But let's see. Maybe some of these commentaries here. Like add anything. One or two commentaries at random. Oh, I don't know. Let's just grab one. Pulpit commentary. There's a lot of commentary, obviously, on the stuff. Benson commentary in the beginning. Let's grab this one. That is of this material, visible, and temporal world, which was not without beginning, as many of the ancient heathen philosophers supposed, and of time with relation to all visible beings, the creation of the spiritual, invisible, and eternal world, whether inhabited by the holy or fallen angels, blah, blah, blah. Too long, too complicated. It's kind of preachy. No, forget it. We'll just have to go it alone. So here we are. We're standing on the earth. It's already been created. Our story picks up when the universe is 9 billion years old, approximately. The earth is in its primordial form, approximately 4.5 billion years ago. And it's dark because you can't see through the methane or through the ammonia or methane atmosphere. And below it is some kind of liquid or water. And then what do we have? Verse 3. Elohim yehi or vayhi or. God said, let there be light, and so there was light. Okay, so this doesn't mean the creation of light in the universe. Light had already been created at the Big Bang 9 billion years earlier. Okay, what does this mean? This means if you're standing on the face of the earth and it was dark because the atmosphere was too thick to see the sun and the moon, okay, then now, for the first time, you're going to be able to see through the atmosphere. That primordial atmosphere clears out, and you could see through it, and you could see the lights in the sky for the first time. That's what it's speaking about. It's not speaking about the creation of light energy in the universe, okay, which would have occurred, I don't remember exactly when, but probably right at the time of creation, because it's not, light is not matter, it's energy. So it was created probably when the first, I don't know, nanosecond, or maybe right at the beginning of the creation of the universe. We'd have to check the latest theories on cosmology, okay? So, we are, and what's further proof of this? Yar Elohim et or kitov. God saw that the light was good. Vayavdel Elohim ben or uben choshech. And God separated between the light and the darkness. Okay? Yikra Elohim laor yom lachoshech kara laila. Well, that's an interesting statement, right? If we're talking about light as just electromagnetic energy being created in the universe at the beginning of the Big Bang, that's not the same as night and day, right? It's clear. The context here is clear that we're speaking about night and day. When it says he created light, it means he allowed, or say he allowed, the earth had reached a state where light was able to be seen from the surface of the earth, and the phenomena at that point of day and night started. Before that, the atmosphere was so thick that you could not distinguish between day and night. Maybe it was completely dark, maybe the atmosphere was so thick that it was completely dark, or maybe it was just kind of like pale light, and completely dark at night, but you couldn't make a distinction. You couldn't see any lights. So when it says on the first day that God created light, what it means is, in my opinion, is that the atmosphere evaporated enough so that you could see through it, so that you could see the sun during the day and the darkness or the moon at night. Of course, we'll speak about the moon and the sun afterwards. Okay? You see where I'm going with this? And I think it's very clear. And I think it's a big mistake that people make, thinking that the story starts at the beginning of the universe when it doesn't. It starts basically at the beginning of the creation of the earth. Okay, any questions, any comments? Somebody want to get involved and say something? Type it in. Nobody? Okay, let's go on. So now we see where I'm going with this. Let's see if it all starts to make sense. I think that it does make a lot more sense this way. Okay? Vayhi erev vayhi boker yom echad. Okay? So now there was evening and there was morning, day one. Okay? So until there are these lights, you can't have evening and morning, right? Evening and morning don't make sense. Day and night don't make any sense until you have the sun and the moon, and everything is from the perspective of someone standing on the earth, the primordial earth, and seeing it formed, right? If we were just speaking about light, what would that even mean? There was evening and there was morning. Evening and morning are based on the movements of the earth on its axis, right? So when we're facing towards the sun, when we're not facing towards the sun, right? So these are not cosmological statements about the creation of electromagnetic energy, the creation of light at the Big Bang. These are statements about us standing on the earth and being able to now see day, night, evening, morning. Okay? Yom Echad. I would even go so far as to say that this is now speaking about Erev Vayhi Boker Yom Echad. And there was evening and there was morning, day one. Or day one, right? That maybe this is speaking about the first day on earth, the first time that you were standing on planet earth and you could see the evening and you could see the morning. That's day one, perhaps, although not necessarily. This is very confusing what it means, day one, day two, etc. Okay. So let's go on and let's see where we go with this. So verse 6, Vayomer Elohim yihir arakia utoch hamayim. Okay. He mavdir ben mayim namayim. Well, this is interesting. So God said, let there be, well, this is usually translated very poorly as a firmament. As many commentators will point out, rakia means like a beaten, sometimes translated as dome. But I think Robert Alter points out it doesn't necessarily mean a dome shape. It just means a beaten, a rakia is like a beaten metal. It's like a separation. Like if you think you take a piece of metal and you beat it out into like a thin, almost like tin foil. Okay? Think of it as like a piece of tin foil. Okay? Let's just get our Robert Alter on this one. Actually, get a Everett Fox first. So here he translates it as a dome. So Robert Alter does. So he translates it as a vault. The Hebrew rakia suggests a hammer slab, arched, but the English architectural term with its celestial associations created by poetic tradition is otherwise appropriate. Okay. So, right. So it just happened to be in the shape of an arc because from our point of view, it looks like a big arc if you look up in the sky, right? But he's pointing out that the word rakia does not really mean an arc per se. It just means a beaten out slab of metal or a beaten out slab of some kind of substance. Let's look at this here. Here, rakia, an extended surface expanse. Extended surface expanse as if beaten out. Compare blah, blah, blah. And then we have a whole things to compare to. Flat expanse as if of ice. The vault of heaven or firmament regarded by Hebrews as solid and supporting the waters above it. So let's just grab maybe one or two random. Let's see. Okay, Ezekiel 122. This is his vision with the different types of angels. And we have here, it's Ezekiel 122. So Udmut al Rashei Chaya. So the image or the shape, the likeness al Rashei Chaya on the heads of the animal. Rakia was a beaten work, right? It was like a beaten flat surface. Ein hakerach was a beaten surface, a flat surface. Ein hakerach, the color of ice. Hanora natui al rashehem milamala. An awesome Ein hakerach hanora, this awesome appearance or beaten out substance, the color of ice, stretched out. Al Rashem milamala, stretched out upon their heads from above. Okay, so who knows exactly what that vision means? But the idea is, again, it's a rakia, and here it uses the word natui, or stretched out. So the idea is it's this thing, this like flat metal surface that's stretched out on something. Okay, that's what a rakia is, usually translated as firmament, but it really means, again, Robert Alter does vault, but basically a piece of metal that's beaten and flat. You think of it as like a thin sheet of tinfoil. Okay, so God said, "Let there be a thin sheet of tinfoil." B'toch hamayim, within the water. So we have water all over the place. Okay, there's nothing separating the water from below and the water from above, and now we're going to have this thin sheet of metal. Okay, this beaten out substance, which is going to separate the water below and the water above. Okay, Lahi mavdil ben mayim lamayim. Should separate between water and water, and specifically, so what does it mean separate between water and water? This is going to be a division between the waters above and the waters below, and we'll talk about what that means in a second. Okay. V'ya'as Elohim et harakia, so he made this beaten out piece of tinfoil. V'yavdel ben hamayim asher mitachad le'rakia uben hamayim asher me'al le'rakia v'yichen, and he distinguished, separated between the water that was above this vault. We'll call it a vault. I'm going to call it this beaten out piece of tinfoil, just to make it clear, right, in our own modern conception, what the idea is. Uvein amayim, or maybe it's not tinfoil, maybe more like saran wrap, so you can see through it. Okay. Uvein amayim asher me'al le'rakia. So this beaten out saran wrap, or this beaten out clear thin metal so thin you can see through it, let's put it that way, okay? Separated, its purpose was to separate between the waters below and the waters above. That was its purpose. That's what this rakia is. This beaten out piece of metal so see through it. Okay? So on the first day, we had a separation of clouds, so you could separate, or a parting of the clouds, so you could separate between day and night. You could see the sun, you could see the moon, or not even necessarily. We'll get to sun and moon afterwards, okay? But you could see when it's light and you could see when it's dark. It's not just all dark, right? Back before this, it was all dark. Verse 2, there was darkness on the face of the abyss, either the earth covered with water or the molten earth. You couldn't even see through at all. It was completely dark. Okay. All right, so I'm going to revise what I'm saying here. So here, when the light is created, you could finally distinguish between night and day. The atmosphere had not cleared, okay? But you could finally see between, you could finally make a distinction from the earth. It wasn't always dark. You can make a distinction between night and day. Okay, you couldn't yet see the sun and the moon and the stars. That's going to come in day 4. But you could see sometimes it was lighter, sometimes it was darker. Maybe that's what it means. Maybe. But let's go with that, okay? So now we have separation, or the ability to distinguish between darkness and light, to look through the atmosphere and, oh, I can't see the sun, but it's like a cloudy day, right? I can't see the sun on a cloudy day, but I know when it's day and I know when it's night, right? I can have a whole week of rain and I could still know when it's daytime outside and when it's nighttime outside without ever seeing once the sun or the moons or the stars, right? The second day, we're making a distinction between the waters above and the waters below, okay? So, one second. Right? So here, distinction between the waters above and the waters below. And what are the waters above and the waters below? Well, we have a hint here in verse 8. So Rakia is the same as Shemayim. Shemayim is usually translated as the sky or the heavens, right? So it means the waters that when you look up in the heavens in the sky, it means the waters that come from the sky. In other words, what are we talking about? Rain or precipitation. That's all it means, okay? If you think of yourself as a human being, okay, standing on the earth, you know nothing about, you're not a modern scientist. You're just trying to describe things from the way you see things. You see water below, you see rivers and oceans and waterfalls and stuff like that. Okay, that's the water that's below. And you see water above. That's the rain, or maybe even the clouds, the fog, the water vapor that's condensing, right? Maybe you can feel it on, the water vapor. But whatever it is, it's coming from the sky, right? So that's what it's speaking about at this point. So what we're saying here is that this rakia, this shemayim, okay, is kind of when you look up in the sky, that's where the rain comes from, okay? And so finally, there was a distinction, okay? Maybe before that, everything was just, again, it was tohu vavohu, it was chaos. There was just water all over the place, right? The whole earth was covered with water, maybe it was raining constantly, or maybe maybe there was even no distinction at that point. Maybe there wasn't even rain. Maybe this is talking about the beginning of rain for the first time. Okay, but at any rate, it's speaking about making a distinction between the waters that are below, the formation of the rivers, oceans, etc., and the water above, but not even yet, right? In the third day, we're going to get the waters below, condensing. So I guess the idea here is that the entire earth was covered with water, right? Because it says here in verse 2, Ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. So I think this would imply, oh shoot, my battery's about to go dead. I'll have to get to charge it, just 1 second. This would imply that the entire earth is covered with water, or some kind of liquid, okay? Finally, you could see through. Here on the first day, you could see through. You can make out the distinction between day and night, looking through the thick primordial atmosphere. Here, finally, it's not just water all over the place. There seems to be some distinction. The water, it clears up a little bit, and you notice there's water below you, and there's water coming from the sky above. Okay? Let's take a break for 1 minute. I'm just going to get my charger. So I'll be right back. Okay, plug this in. Just give me a second here. And it's an important lesson to learn in the Torah, right? So many mistakes are made by people thinking that the Torah is talking about cosmology when it's really speaking about the point of view from on the earth. Okay, so for instance, the sun goes out and the sun comes in. Right, the sun goes out from the east like a chariot and comes back home at night. Right. So people say, "Oh, that's so stupid." The ancient Israelites, they didn't understand a thing about cosmology, which clearly they did based on these verses, right? Because they wouldn't have gotten anything close to this if they hadn't. And but really, it's just speaking about from our point of view. From our point of view, standing on the earth, yes, it looks like the sun is is going around us. That's why for thousands of years, most people thought the sun was going around the earth and not the earth going around the sun, right? But the Torah is not making a scientific statement. It's making a point of view statement. It's saying what things look like from the earth. And that's what we're seeing here in this first chapter of Bereshit. Okay, let's go on. Any comments? Any questions so far? Nobody? Somebody's got to have a question or a comment. No? All right, let's go on. So, and I'm going to stop in about 40 minutes or so. Okay, so the second day, we're making some kind of distinction. All the water isn't just a giant chaos, water all over the place. You start seeing distinction between the water below and the water above. The water below is now going to coagulate on the third day. Vayomer Elohim, Yikavu Hamayim. That's where you get the word mikvah from. Okay, Yikavu or Yikawu. Okay, gather together is usually the way this is translated. Okay, let's see how Robert Alter renders that one. Well, Everett Fox gives it gather to one place. Gathered in one place. So, Yomer Elohim Yikavu Hamayim Mitachat Hashemayim. So now we've made the distinction. On the second day, we made this distinction between the waters that are above the rakia, right? Yavdel ben hamayim asher mitachat rakia. These are the waters that are below the rakia, the beaten out metal. Uben hamayim asher me'ana rakia, between the waters that are above the rakia. So we have our beaten out metal. We have a distinction between the waters above this beaten out metal, the shamayim, this firmament, okay, and the waters below. Now we're going to deal with the waters below. So the waters above we leave alone for a while. Now, Yomer Elohim Yikavu Amayim Mitachat Hashemayim. Those are the waters below the rakia that we spoke about here in the previous verses. Okay, so now all of these waters are gonna gather together El Makom Achad, to one place, V'tera'eh Hayabasha V'yahi Chen, and the dry land. I don't know where Levi is, but when he comes back, we can put him away. Okay, V'yahi. And the dry land became visible, and so it was. So this is again speaking about all of the entire earth being covered with water, a theme which we saw all the way going back to verse 2, right? Choshech al penei tahom, darkness was on the face of the depths. Ruach Elohim mirachefet al penei hamayim, and the spirit or the wind of God hovered or went to and fro on the face of the water, right? So the conception is maybe not that the earth was picking it up when the earth was molten, but picking it up when the earth was covered with water, right? And we know this to be true from the geological history of the earth, that at a certain point the earth was completely covered with water, right? I'd have to find it here. Blah, blah, blah. So I don't know, I'd have to pick it out of there, but that's according to scientific knowledge, the earth was originally completely covered with water. Okay. And now the waters gather together, so to speak, and the dry land is exposed for the first time ever. Okay. Vikra Elohim liyabasha eretz. So he called the dry part, the dry land, eretz, which just means land. In fact, it's where you get the word earth from, in my opinion. Okay, the word earth can be traced back to the Germanic ard, which is very similar to aretz. Of course, the standard etymologies will not say it comes from Semitic languages or from Hebrew, but it does. You even have the Romance language Terra, T-E-R-R-A, right? Like the Latin Terra, which is like eretz. It's just what's called metathesis, just the consonant switch. Okay, instead of E, let's see, E-R-E-T-Z, eretz, you get T-E-R-R-A, right? It switches, okay? The tzadi and the resh switch. So instead of eretz, it's Terra or Terra, okay? Because probably the Romans didn't have a sa sound or a tsa sound. Okay, no, so it's much like. At any rate, so the dry land is called eretz, okay? Land, earth. Ulemikveh hamayim karayamim, and where the waters come together, that's called yamim, seas or oceans. Okay. So now we're making it. What do you want, Sufi? What Sufi? Okay. So now we're making a distinction between dry land and between continents, between land and ocean. Okay. And we're giving them names, just as we gave names to the Rakia, who's named Shamayim. Right here, that beaten out metal that's so thin you can see through it is now called Shamayim, or maybe that you can see through it. Maybe the clouds are painted on it and the star. Well, no stars yet, but well, I guess even not, right? You can't see through it at that point. That's the whole point, right? But you can make a distinction that it's there, that there's some water above and some water below. They're just kind of separated out. Okay. So we have a name for the dry part, that's eretz, earth. The word earth comes from the word eretz, in my opinion. And the seas are called yamim. Okay. Yad Elohim kitov, and God saw that it was good. Yomer Elohim, Tadshe, haaretz deshe. Let the earth. Okay, now we have the earth, right? We have our dry land, and now what's going to happen on the dry land? Okay, Tadshe deshe. Deshe is grass. Okay, so let the earth be filled with grass. Esev mazria zera, eitz pri ose pri lemino asher zara'o bo al haaretz vayichen. So God said, let the earth be filled with grass and esev, herbs, mazria zera, that makes seeds, okay, eitz pri, and trees of fruit, trees with fruit, okay, osepri, that makes fruit, fruit trees that make fruit, lemino, according to their own kind, meaning an orange is not going to make a banana, an orange will make another banana, right? Asher zara obo, where the seed is inside it, right? The seed is inside the fruit. Ala aretz vayichen. Okay, so verse 12, v'totzei haaretz desha aisev mazria zera leminehu va'etz osepri asher zara'o bo leminehu v'yar Elohim ki tov. V'hi boker, v'hi erev, v'hi boker yom hashvishi. So what is there to say about this here? Okay, so there's a big misunderstanding. Okay, a lot of people say, well, first you had life in the oceans before there was any life on the land whatsoever. Okay, and so this is factually incorrect. But I think that's a misunderstanding of what these verses are trying to say. Okay, the process started when the land was dried out. Really, what we're talking about here is the land drying out, and that eventually led to a whole bunch of other things. So it's not speaking that all of this happened before the fourth day. It wouldn't make sense. Okay, even let's say the ancient Israelites knew absolutely nothing about science. They knew, right? Any idiot knows that you need the sun and the moon in order to grow plants, to grow grass, and to grow fruit trees, right? So this couldn't be chronological at all. This is speaking about a process that began. This is really saying that on the third day, what happened is that the ground became dry, and that led to a process which ended up resulting in grass, and then herbs that have seed, right? And then fruit trees, and that is chronological. Okay, that's the way things happened, right? First, you had these simple grasses, like let's say, I'm not sure what type of plants wouldn't have seeds. I guess mosses. I'm not sure if they do. They probably do. But simple kind of plant life, okay, which eventually grew into seeds, right? Grew into plants that produce seeds, and eventually grew into trees. But it's not saying that all of this happened before the fourth day. Okay, it's saying the process started. What it's really saying happened on the third day is that the ground dried out. Okay, that the earth, the dry parts of the earth were separated out from the oceans, and that allowed the process to begin, which would end up in grass, herbs, and fruit trees. Okay. Does that make sense? So there's a problem with chronology. People, again, think that the Torah works in kind of a Western linear way, but it doesn't. It's saying day 3, the ground was dried out, and this allowed a process to begin where plants began developing on the earth. But it doesn't mean all of these plants developed before the fourth day where the sun and the moon and the stars appear. That would be stupid, right? So you cannot have plants that rely on photosynthesis when there's no light, okay, or there's very little light coming through. Maybe you can, like a cloudy day all the time, right? Things can't grow if it's constantly cloudy. Okay, you need sun. So, but the process was put into place on this third day. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Fourth day, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Huh. That sounds really stupid, right? If you want to sit here and criticize the Torah, say, God, that's ridiculous. I mean, we already have fruit trees, and now The Torah is saying that the sun and the moon and the stars are being created, and we already had light being created, right? All the way back in verse 3, right? And now we have the sun and the moon and the stars, and we know that the sun and the moon and the stars were created before the earth. So how can the sun and the moon and the stars be created now? But of course, it's not talking about that. It's talking about the next stage. The next stage was the clearing out of the atmosphere so that you could see the sun and the moon and the stars if you were standing on earth. Okay? Now we go to the next main event. Okay? So first, the ground drop. So let's go through exactly what happened. Okay? It's dark. Everything. Finally, you could start making out night and day. You couldn't see the sun and the moon yet, but you could start seeing through the atmosphere enough so that it wasn't always dark. You can make a distinction between when it was light out and when it was dark out. Thick, thick cloud cover, think of it this way. But everything was still, there was water all over the place, right? But finally, things started congealing, or things started separating out enough that you can make a distinction between the waters from above and the waters from below. The waters above were the rain, the precipitation. The waters below were the entire earth covered with water. Okay, still, as we saw already back in the beginning. Finally, the waters that were below the rakia, okay, they started also coagulating. They started also receding, so that you have a distinction between the seas and the dry land. And this started a process, and then, so that's the third day, okay? And this started a process which eventually ended up in all kinds of plants and trees. Now on the fourth day, now we go back, or we go to the next major event, okay? So we're talking about the major events and then the processes that they start. So the next major event, okay, is that the atmosphere now, right, the water is receding. Finally, the atmosphere clears up enough. The rakia clears up enough that you can see through it, and you can see the sun, the moon, and the stars. Okay? So Yomer Elohim Yehi me'orot b'rakia shamayim. So it doesn't say let the sun, the moon, and the stars be created. It says let there be lights in the rakia, in the beaten out, right, thin tinfoil, transparently thin tinfoil, right? Let these lights appear. It doesn't say create, they're created. It says they appear. Okay? They appear in where? In the rakia, in the heavens. Rakia, we said, is shemayim. Right? We're given some definitions. The rakia is the shemayim. The dry land is the eretz. The wet land is the yamim. Okay? Yamim. The light part, when you see light in the sky, that's called yom. When you see dark in the sky, that's called laila. Okay, we're given all of these definitions. These are defining, right? These words are being defined for us here. Okay, so finally, when you could see these heavenly bodies, right? These lights in the sky. Before that, you couldn't see any lights in the sky. You're standing on the earth. There was such thick cloud cover, right? Just like on a cloudy day. Happens still today, right? You look up in the sky at night. It's cloudy. You won't see the sun. You won't see the moon. You won't see the stars. Not even at night, during the day also, right? You won't see the sun, right? You know it's day, but you don't see the sun. So that's the way it was in the primordial earth, okay? Until the waters receded enough, or things dried up enough, or things, became ordered enough so that you could finally see through that primordial atmosphere, and you were able to see these stars in the sky. And what does it say? It says, there shall be lights, berakia, in the sky, berakia hashamayim, okay, in the firmament of the sky, or the beaten out plate of the sky. Lahavdir ben hayom uben alayla. Okay, so we knew there was already day, that had already been created, right? Right here. It was defined. When you see light, and you can see there's light in the sky, there's light, that was called day. And we could see when you couldn't, and there was darkness, that was called night. So light, day and night already existed. But now, We have markers for those days and nights. We have glowing things in the sky that tell us when it's day and when it's night. You knew it was day and it was night, but you couldn't see the glowing things in the sky. Okay? Now suddenly you can, or eventually you can, because things are again coagulating. So these lights, barakia shamayim, in the sky, labdil ben hayom u ben alayla. So they are now going to be the things that you see when it's day, or they make the distinction between the day and the night. You don't just have to rely on this, oh, it's kind of looks a little bit, lighter through the thick clouds. Okay, you can now actually see the sun, you can see the moon. Ahila otot, and of course they're going to be for signs. Lemuadim u liyamim mishanim. So what are they going to be for signs? Okay. Lemuadim. Muadim is going to be for, well, it's poorly translated sometimes as holidays, but it means for, for cycles, for days in cycles, or for times in the year. Okay, liyamim for days and for years. Okay, so let's analyze all of this. Okay, so it's going to be for signs. The sun and the moon are going to be for signs. So when is the sun and the moon for a sign? Is it ever said that it's used as a sign? I can't think of anything offhand, but I think what it means is, again, that, for instance, when you see the new moon, that's the sign that the new month begins, right? Le Mu'adim, okay, this is basically for cycles, right? Yearly cycles or monthly cycles, right? So, for instance, a yearly holiday or a monthly holiday, like Rosh Chodesh, like the beginning of the month. Liyamim, for days, so you can count off the days. Ulishanim, Mishanim, and you can count off the years. So now the sun and the moon are going to be used to count off the days, to count off the years, to mark the yearly holidays, and as signs. Okay, so basically they're going to be used to basically to count, right? Basically to count and set the time in the year that we are. Okay. So all right, verse 15. V'hayu limeorot barakia hashamayim la'ir ala aretz vayichen. And so it shall be that these lights in the beaten out metal of the sky, beaten out transparent metal of the sky, right? You could think of it as like you're almost looking at a movie screen, right? That's what the surakia basically means. It's like this movie screen that's above you, and on this movie screen you see the sun, you see the stars, you see the earth. I'm sorry, not the earth. You see the moon. La'ir ala aretz vayichen, and that shall shine light. Okay. La'ir, the same word as or, vayhi or, let there be light. Now we're going to actually have light shining, right? Direct light shining and hitting the earth, not just being seen, diffused through the clouds, or being, detected through the clouds. Okay, verse 16. V'ya'as Elohim et shnei ha'me'orot ha'gedolim, את המאור הגדול לממשלת היום ואת המאור הקטן לממשלת הלילה ואת הכוכבים. Okay, so he made the large light, that's the sun, to rule during the day, the small light to rule at night, that's the moon, and also the stars. Verse 17. ויתן אותם אלוהים ברקיע שמיים להאיר על הארץ. And God placed them, okay, or let them be seen in the movie screen, right? The beaten out movie screen that we look up at, to shine down on the earth. And to rule over day and night, labdil ben haor uben hachoshech, and to make a distinction or distinguish between the light and the darkness. Well, that's interesting, right? So back here, okay, here we have Yavdel Elohim ben haor uben hachoshech. God made a distinction, right? After the let there be light, Yomer Elohim vayihi or vayihi or. So let there be light, meaning let it not always be dark from the face of the earth. Biar Elohim et haor ki tov. God saw that the light, it was good that there was light. Yavdel ben Elohim ben haor leben hachoshech. And God here made a distinction between the light and the darkness. Okay. In other words, you could see that it was lighter sometimes and darker sometimes, but now we have that same phrase. Okay. Labdil ben haor uben hachoshech. Ulabdil ben haor uben hachoshech. To make a distinction between the light and the darkness, it's exactly the same thing. Yavdel Elohim ben haor uben hachoshech. So here God had made this distinction, but now he's appointing basically these lights to be to do that job, or to be those signs, right? You couldn't see these lights in the sky before, but now their job is going to be to make it clear when it's day and when it's night. Okay, to distinguish between the day and the night. It's that same phrase, Labdil ben or ben choshech. Yad Elohim ki tov, and God saw it was good. Vayhi erev vayhi boker yom revi'i. So it was evening and it was morning for day 4, or the 4th day. Okay, I just want to point out we haven't even spoken about this idea of day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, how long each of these days lasts. I don't even want to go there because it's been discussed in many other places, and it's still not clear to this day. Okay, so I want to focus on another aspect of this, which is what we're focusing on. Okay. Okay. So now the next thing is going to be the creation of animals, basically, is what we're talking about here. So here we had only plants mentioned, right? We don't have any animals mentioned at all. We have only plants mentioned. Okay? Here for the first time we have animals mentioned. Okay? So let's see how that goes. It's day 5. Yomer Elohim yishretzu mayim sheretz nefesh chaya. God said, let the waters, right? The waters have already been separated out. Let them swarm with the swarms of living beings. Okay? Chaya basically means an animal. Let's get a definition for it very quickly. Alive, living. Animals. So it really is referring to animals, right? That's what it's referring to here. So this is where the animals started being created, the more advanced animals. So again, the process had already been set for the plants to be created on Earth. It doesn't mean all of the plants were created and then the animals were created. It means the process was set in place where the plants began on their direction. And now we go back to the seas and we have the animals beginning on their direction in the seas. Okay, the more advanced animals it's speaking about. V'yomer Elohim yishretzu hamayim sheretz nefesh chaya. Okay, so animals swarming in the seas. V'ofi ofef ha'aretz, and now all of a sudden, for the first time, we have animals on the land. Okay, and what are these animals? These are animals that fly in the sky. Okay, v'ofi ofef ha'aretz al pnei rakei hashamayim. And here we have, where are they flying? They're flying al panei, on the face, maybe in front of, or, you know, as if you look up in the sky and you see them also on that rakia, on that movie screen in the sky. Okay, the movie screen in the sky. Maybe that's a good way to translate Rakia Shemayim. The movie screen in the sky. Okay? Vayivra Elohim et taninim agdolim. Okay, so we have these taninim agdolim. So what the heck does that mean? Well, the tanin is often translated as a sea creature. Let's look at this for a second. Dragon, sea monster. Serpent, they translated here. So at any rate, it's some kind of big lizard, sea monster, dragon kind of thing. Okay. Yivra Elohim et tananim agidolim. So God created these giant monsters. Et kol nefesh chaya. So what were these giant monsters? First of all, were they in the sea or were they on land? Is it speaking about? Some people will translate taninim as sea monsters, which would mean they were in the sea. Serpent, dragon, sea monster. Tan. Jackal. So BDB says here, let's see. Serpent. Well, if we look at Deuteronomy 32:33, let's put that for a second. Hamat Taninim. So this is the blessings to the various tribes. Do this. 32:33. Oh boy, that's not what I have to do. Let's do it this way. So this is the blessing for Ephraim. We just read this last week, 2 weeks ago. Amati Ephraim. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait 1 second. No, this is Hazina. Okay. So this is Moshe's last speech, basically. And if we go down to 33, if Hamat Taninim, Yenam, Verosh, Pitanim, Akhsar. Okay, so Hamat Taninim, Yenam. So the poison of snakes or of serpents is their wine. Verosh Pitanim, and the head of cobras is cruel. So, okay, it's poetic. Just 1 second, please. Okay, but the point here is that this refers to a serpent. So again, some kind of serpent. So it's not clear. We'd have to do more of a study, but it's not clear if this is speaking about things that are necessarily in the sea, or if it's speaking about things that are on land as well. Okay? Excuse me for just 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. I'm back. So I guess you could say these Tanim, these great serpents, is this speaking about the dinosaurs on the land? Well, ואת כל נפש החיה הרומסת אשר שתו המים למיניהם וכל עוף כנף למיניהו וירא אלוהים כי טוב. 1 second. No, so it's obviously not the creatures on land because we're not up to the creature on land yet. So this is in the sea. So some kind of great sea creatures, great sea serpents, maybe the predecessors to the dinosaurs, huge. So here we have only the fish basically and the birds. Okay. Again, this is very much in line with evolution. Who knew this? How could you know this? Right? Unless you had some kind of deep understanding of the universe, which came from the wisdom of God, right? There was no science back then per se, as we know, but science is basically in line with all of this, right? That first you had the fish and the birds and the mammals came only later, right? At any rate, we could go on. We've been going at this for about, well, I suppose we should finish, but I'm getting a bit tired. I've been going at this for about 2 hours. So let me just read through a little bit clearly. I think you all get the idea that what we're talking about is the earth developing from the time of the primordial earth, not from the beginning of the universe. Okay? And of course, there's so much to say about this. You could write an entire book on this chapter. No, you can write an entire book probably on the first sentence. But let's go on and see what we have here. Okay? So verse 22. So now we have the fish and the birds basically. And this is the first time we're getting a blessing, right? The plants are not blessed to be fruitful and multiply, but the animals are blessed to be fruitful and multiply, right? Which shows that the animals, it's kind of like they're higher level creatures, right? They have some kind of soul that the plants don't have. Plants are beautiful. I love plants, but they don't have, they're not blessed. You can't bless plants to be fruitful and multiply, but you can bless animals to be fruitful and multiply. Okay? So fill the waters in the seas, and let the flying creatures, the birds, multiply on the land. And it was evening and it was morning, the 5th day. Verse 24. So let the land, God said, let the land, let the earth, right? The word earth is related to the original Semitic word aretz. Let the earth bring out nefesh chaya, living creatures. Right? So here we had nefesh chaya. Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures and flying above the earth. Okay, so that was nefesh chaya. So these were animals, and now we have let the land bring out nefesh chaya. Okay, living creatures, animals. Limina. Okay, according to their type. Behema, waremes, haito aretz, limina. Okay, behema, I think it's just larger creatures is what it's referring to here. Remes, things that crawl on the ground. That would be like mice and spiders and anything that crawls on the ground. The haito aretz, limina, and all kinds of living creatures. Okay, and so it was. V'as Elohim et hayat haaretz lemina, v'et behema lemina, v'et kol remes ha'adama lemina v'yar Elohim ki tov. So here we have the creation basically of all types of animals, of land animals. Okay. So finally, on day 6, And isn't it interesting? Now we get to man, but man doesn't get his own day. Man is made together with the animals, and that also is in line, right? First of all, we know man is an animal, and second of all, we know that man was created only very recently in evolution, right? The earliest humans are, depending on how you define a human, but what is it? Australopithecus, Homo australopithecus, I can't even remember, right? Maybe 2 million years old, right? So of the past 4.5 billion years, we've been talking about since the creation of the, or since the, since the creation of the earth, or since the primordial earth, human beings only take up 2 million, right? So that would be, let's see, 1/50th of a billion years. I'm sorry, not 1/50th, 1/500th of a billion years. So that'd be 1/2000th of the entire time we've been speaking about here, okay? And so human beings don't get their own day. They're created at the end of, I think with Carl Sagan used to do that clock, right? Human beings were created at 11:59 on the clock, if you know what I'm talking about. He would split the creation of the universe into 12 hours, and human beings were like 11:58 or 11:57 or something like that p.m., right? Right, at the end, right? That's how, so human beings only been around for a short time. But the crown of creation, right? They don't get their own day because it only happened such a short time ago. Let us make man in our image and in our likeness. וירדו בדגת הים ועופש המים ובהמה ובכל הארץ ובכל הרמס הרומס על הארץ. And let them rule over the fish and the birds, or the flying things, the large animals, or the things that walk on the ground, the things that crawl on the ground. I think that's really the best way to say it, okay? Dagat hayam would be the sea creatures. Of shamayim would be the flying things, because of can also include things like flies, right? Anything that flies is an of, from the word af, to fly. Behema, that would be things that walk on the ground, like the larger creatures that walk on the ground, and anything that swarms, that can include spiders, insects. It can also include mice, rats, etc. Okay, so basically over all of the earth. وَيِفْرَى Elohim et Adam b'tzalmo, and God made the man. This is the first time we have here the word Adam. Okay, we don't have a reason yet why he's called Adam, but he's just called Adam. Later we're gonna get a reason for why he's called Adam, because it's taken from the Adamah. But in this chapter, we don't get that. And now we also have the question: who's God speaking to? وَيُمَرْ Elohim na'aseh Adam. Let us make man in our image and as our likeness. Well, who's he speaking to? Well, the two answers you're usually going to get are that this is the royal we. He's just speaking to himself, like, when the queen says, "Oh, let us have tea," and she's only talking about herself. Okay. Or the other answer you're going to get is the angels. But I think the answer is clear, and I'm going to prove to you, in my opinion at least, that it's the second one, that he's speaking to the angels. How do I know that? I can just find it here. Let's see here. Find it. I'm really in the middle of this right now, and I cannot have side conversations. Do whatever you want to do. Okay, let's see if I can find this here. One second. One second. One second. Oh boy, I have to find it. 1 second here. Notes. Oh gosh, I have to find it. Here it is. It is Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. So let's read this here. Okay, so this is after Adam and Eve have sinned. And God says, Vayomer Yahweh, and Yahweh said, Yahweh, the God said, Hen, Haya, behold, the man, Haya kechad mimenu, has become like one of us. Leda'at tov vera. So he's saying he's become like one of us. Okay? Yes, you could say he's speaking about the royal we, but I don't think it would work in this way. Okay, one of us, who's he speaking about? Okay? The most likely explanation here is he's speaking to what we would call the angels. Okay, he's become like one of us. To know the difference between good and evil, to know good and evil. And before he reaches out his hand and takes also from the tree of life, and lives forever. Okay? So, just 1 second here. 1 second. Right? So this phrase that God has become like one of us would imply that God is speaking here to the angels. Good and evil. Know the difference between good and evil. Right? So this sheds light over here that when he says, "Vayomer Elohim na'aseh adam b'tzalmenu kidmutenu," let us make the man in our image and in our likeness, that he's not using the royal, speaking to what we could colloquially call the angels or the host, right? Other creatures that don't exist on the earth, but that exist, on some other realm that may visit the earth and get a temporary body, but they know the difference between good and evil. Okay? And here God is speaking to them and saying, well, this man has become like one of us. Unless you could say that he's just using the royal we here. Let's run that through, right? Well, that doesn't make sense because he wouldn't say it this way. Like one of us? He couldn't be talking about himself there, right? He's talking about a multitude, right? One of us. Right? So over the royal we, he might say something like, Vayomer Elohim hen adam haya kamonu, right? Like me, but using the we. But it doesn't say that. He says, Ke'achad mimenu, like one of us. And even let's get a translation on that. That's Genesis 3:22. Let's get a Robert Alter on that one. Okay, so, and the Lord God said, now that the human has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, like one of us, right? So that's not the royal we being used there. That's he speaking to other creatures who know good and evil, right? And Robert Alter actually doesn't even have a comment on that. But that really solves our dilemma in Genesis 1:26. Is God speaking in the royal we to himself? Let the queen drink tea, or let us drink tea, when the queen is speaking about herself, right? Or, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Or is he speaking to the angels, right? Let us make man in our image and our likeness, or yeah. So Genesis 3:22 solves that dilemma. Here it's clear. He's speaking to the angels, right? He's worried that the man is going to become like one of us knowing good and evil, knowing good versus evil, right? So that sheds light on this. Solves a long-standing dilemma in my eyes. Okay, we'll read to the end of this chapter, and then we're going to end the study. So we said he's going to rule over everything. Verse 27. So he made the man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Right? So it says he made him in his image. Why does it repeat and say in the image of God he made him? Because we know that repetition in the Torah is emphasis. Okay? There's emphasis that it's in his image, and then it clarifies and emphasizes in the image of God. Okay? What does that mean in the image of God? Okay, well, it doesn't mean knowing the difference between good and evil, because Adam and Eve at the beginning don't know the difference of good and evil until they eat from the tree of good and evil, right? So what does it mean to be made in the image of God? Okay? Well, that's a long discussion. But in a nutshell, it means that special thing that distinguishes us from the animals, right? Many of us have animals. Many of us know animals, love animals. We have animals and we love them. But they're not the same as human beings, right? You can't sit down. You can't have a conversation with them. You can't reason with them. You can't speak about mathematics or poetry or tell them a story, or you can't speak about morality, right? That's what it must mean, because no other creature is made in the image of God. The animals are made, but they're not made b'tselem Elohim, right? And in fact, let's grab this word here. All right. So here, this is interesting that when I believe it's Cain, when Cain gives birth, it says that he gave birth b'dmuto k'tzalmo, in his likeness and in his image, a son, right? So we're like God's children. We're like, we're like, as if God could give birth, right? Then he would give birth to human beings. He kind of did give birth to human beings, right? We're basically his children. He didn't physically give birth to us because he's not a physical creature, but he brought us out of the land, out of the earth, as his children, right? Just as when Cain had a son, it was in his image and in his likeness. So we're in God's image and his likeness. We're like the continuation of God. We have some aspect to us that the animals don't have and the plants don't have, right? Because the animals are never said to be created in his likeness and in his image. Okay? Elohim bara oto, zachar nekeva bara otam. So he made them as man and woman. Okay? Vayivarech otam. Oh shoot. Verse 28. Oh, jeez. Let's try it again. Verse 28. ויברך אותם אלוהים ויאמר להם אלוהים פרו ורבו מלאו את הארץ וכבשוה ורדו בדחת הים מעוף השמיים ובכל חיה הרומסת על הארץ. So first of all, they get a blessing. The animals got the blessing, remember, right? Both the fish and the birds and the land creatures got the blessing. Okay? Actually, the animals don't even get the blessing here. The land creatures don't get the blessing, per se. It's the birds and the fish that get the blessing. In line 22, in verse 22. But, okay, we can assume that the animals get the blessing anyway, and I think they do get the blessing later on. But human beings, we get the blessing to be fruitful and multiply, Okay, fill the land, conquer it, and rule over, and then all of the other creatures. Now we have a list of all the other creatures, the sea creatures, the flying creatures, and the swarmy creatures on the ground. Okay, on the earth. Verse 29. ויאמר אלוהים הנה נתתי לכם את כל עשב זורע זרע אשר על פני כל הארץ ואת כל העץ אשר בו פרי עץ זורע זרע לכם יהיה לאכלה. So now we go back to the plants. So we're ruling over all of these guys over day 5 and day 6, right? And then we go back to the plants, which were day 3, okay, which were mentioned in day 3, and we had those different types of plants, right? The grass, and then the seed-bearing herbs, and then the fruit-bearing trees. And now it says that the seed-bearing herbs, esav zoreh zera, the seed-bearing herbs, and the fruit-bearing tree, now there are food. So everything else that was created beforehand is for our use, right? The sun and the moon and the stars are used for, we saw, for otot, lemodim, liyamim, or the shanim, right? For signs and yearly appointed times and days and years. The fish and the birds and the land creatures are all for us to rule over, and the plants are for us to eat, right? So everything in a sense created for man, or it's created for man to rule over, to use, to be stewards over, right? Not to use and abuse as we do today, but to be stewards over. Okay. ויאמר אלוהים, נתתי לכם את כל עץ, oh, we just read that. And we can also point out, as many people point out, that what was given to eat, it was only the seed-bearing herbs and the fruit-bearing trees, right? Vegetarians. But we already knew that because it's been mentioned a lot. Verse 30. ולכל חיית הארץ ולכל עוף השמיים ולכל רומס על הארץ אשר בו נפש חיה את כל ירק עשב לאכלה ויחן. So, and for all of the rest of the animals, okay, the flying things, the swarming things on the land, okay, all of the animals, kol yerek esev lachla, they have all of the herbs, the grass and the herbs to eat. Doesn't mention the fruit trees per se, but okay. I guess most animals don't eat fruits. Some do, I guess. Yar Elohim et kol asher asa, and God saw all that he had done. V'hine tov ma'od, and it was very good. V'hi erev v'hi boker yom shishi, and it was evening and it was morning, the 6th day. And then, of course, the 7th day, we'll just end it here. Of course, I wish I could go on for about another 4 hours. V'yichulu hashamayim v'haaretz chotz v'am. So the heaven and the earth were completed, and all of their hosts. Okay. In this case, I guess hosts means all of the stuff that we were speaking about, right? All of the creatures that were in the sky and in the earth and in the seas. ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה. And God ceased on the 7th day the work which he had done. And it's not on the 7th day he ceased, by the 7th day, right? So this gives us insight when we see something like Bayom Shvi'i. It means by, or at the beginning of the 7th day. And he ceased, he halted on the 7th day. And we have the word Yishbot, right? Which is the same as the word Shabbat. In fact, we'll have the word Shabbat in the next verse. So that's where we get the idea of Shabbat. Right? God's Yishbot, he ceased on the 7th day, and so we have the Shabbat. From all of the work he had done, Milacha, so he ceases from Milacha on the 7th day, right? Not flipping on and off light switches and carrying keys from an, when you don't have, when you have an Eruv, but all the work he did, right? So we cease on the Shabbat. So we see the essence of the Shabbat is not lighting a fire or not keeping a fire lit. it's not doing melacha because God stopped from doing all the melacha. So the only rule we have on the Shabbat and on the Chagim is not to do melacha. Okay, and the word melacha, he ceased from all milachto, from all of his melacha which he did. V'yivarech Elohim et Yom HaShvi'i, he blesses on the day, v'yikadesh oto, and sanctified it. He bo shavat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim la'asot, because on it he halted Shabbat from all of the work asher bara Elohim la'asot, which God began to do, God created to do. This is kind of a difficult one to translate, but we have the word bara again, like in Bereshit bara. Let's see how Robert Alter deals with that one. That's Genesis 2:3. Okay. He had ceased from all his tasks that he had created to do. What the heck does that mean? Well, no comment here. All right. Shebara Elohim la'asot, that he created to do. And I think with that, we're going to cease from our work in this study. I'll ask once again if there are any questions or comments before we end the study. I could go on for this parsha. I mean, we've only scraped the surface. We could go on for another 5 hours, but the time has come. It's been a long study. And so we're going to end it here. So if there are no other questions or comments, I thank you all for joining me. This has been Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov of Karaite Insights and the World Alliance of Qara'im. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov.